I actually worked as a paramedic for 9 years. So I went through my own challenges with depression, PTSD, anxiety, and I feel like I look at my experience with psilocybin therapy as one of the biggest, most transformational healing tools I found for myself. So the research is showing, and I think this is where people will get a little more comfortable, is because there is so much research being done all over the world. It's showing that it's actually rerouting neural pathways in the brain. And once I had my first experience and I felt myself change in that experience, I was like, I have to find a path to work with this medicine. So that was the beginning and the introduction, changed my life. And now I've watched so many people transform from this experience.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about the transformative potential of psilocybin therapy for mental health. I'm delighted to welcome Tara Portelli. Tara is a certified natural health practitioner, certified clinical hypnotist, psychologist, psilocybin guide, and the founder of the Arcadia Healing Sanctum. You can reach Tara at her website, arcadiahealing.ca, and I'll include that link in the show notes. Welcome, Tara. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Linda, for having me on. I'm excited for this conversation.
I am too. And I love what I do because I get to have such interesting conversations and meet such wonderful people. And I'm excited to learn from you today. I used to think for the longest time that if you mention anything like mushrooms or psilocybin or psychedelics, we are in 1960s, hippies, party drugs. And it was something that was just not even on the radar. And then a few years ago, I watched that documentary called Fantastic Fungi. And it
Yes.
kind of opened my eyes to the incredible, powerful tool that this can be in the right hands and under the right circumstances to deal with trauma, to deal with depression, to deal with so many different things. And I thought, ooh, that is interesting. And so I've been a little bit curious, but I really don't know a lot. So I'm excited to learn from you today. Is it okay if we start with kind of your story? Because I know that this was not where you started.
No, yeah, absolutely. So I actually worked as a paramedic for 9 years. So I went through my own challenges with depression, PTSD, anxiety, and I feel like I look at my experience with psilocybin therapy as one of the biggest, most transformational healing tools I found for myself. And so after leaving my career after 9 years, I ended up working in a holistic treatment center for mental health and addictions. And that was really eye-opening because I was seeing people transforming their lives, getting off of medications where they could. And it was incredible without using psilocybin, but it was still an amazing journey to watch people come in who are struggling and then leave feeling so much better. So they were using like neurofeedback, meditation, yoga, nutrition routine, like all of these different modalities in order to help the brain function better. And so I found psilocybin back in 2018, and it was on a beach in Mexico. I met a mushroom healer just randomly, synchronistically. And once I had my first experience and I felt myself change in that experience, I was like, I have to find a path to work with this medicine. So that was the beginning and the introduction, changed my life. And now I've watched so many people transform from this experience. So yeah, one time it was known as a party drug, but it's actually been used for thousands of years by the indigenous in order to help with their own healing and spiritual growth. So now we are in this time where there's so much research happening, and it's really amazing to be part of.
Isn't that wonderful that there's been research to kind of help mainstream and figure out how to use this? So it almost feels like it's been used before, and then someone kind of twisted the use, and now we're trying to go back to what it was maybe originally intended for, rather than what I always thought, which was, it's just a party drug, period. And now we're trying to turn it into something that's okay, and that's not it at all. And
No.
it's not only mental and emotional issues, but also physical.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when we do heal the emotions, we can actually heal the physical body. So they are correlated. And so when we go into a mushroom experience, it's incredible, like what I've seen happen for people just through healing the emotions.
Isn't that awesome? Everything is all connected, our
Yeah.
mental, our emotional, our physical. In fact, I don't know if everyone's aware of this, but according to the CDC, even over 90% of our physical ailments, things that we go to the doctor for, actually have an emotional basis. And that's not, off somebody's, blog. That's what the CDC even recognizes. And so it really does matter where we're at and how we're feeling. So can you help for somebody who has never heard of this before and they're still thinking 1960s hippies? Can you kind of help us work our way through some of our mental blocks to being open to using this kind of a thing as a tool?
Yeah, absolutely. So the research is showing, and I think this is where people will get a little more comfortable, is because there is so much research being done all over the world. It's showing that it's actually rerouting neural pathways in the brain. So the scans are pretty incredible. So you're seeing the brain before psilocybin and then afterwards. So I like to compare it to almost like the defragmentation of our brain. So if you think about your computer, you would defrag it to take all of the files and put them, kind of clean them up and then create this space. That's basically what's happening in the brain. So when we're struggling, say with anxiety, depression, looping thoughts, what we're actually experiencing is these neurons firing in the same pattern over and over again. So that's why we end up with the same thoughts. And the more that it fires in that pattern, the harder it is to break. And when we go to traditional therapy, of course, like there is a role for that always. I've been in therapy my whole life. It's actually just trying to override those old thought patterns. But with psilocybin, what's happening is it's breaking that loop, that neural loop, and it's rerouting a new pathway. So then now when you come out of the experience, it's almost like the things that maybe you were thinking over and over again no longer exist. Or if they are coming up for you, it's like they don't have as much power. So it's pretty incredible. So the studies are really, they're really giving people confidence in this medicine as a treatment for people that might be struggling, even just to expand your mind. It's also helping the brain to use more of itself. So obviously we're only using 10% of our brains on any given day, but then you go into a psilocybin experience and it's lighting up so many different areas of the brain that we typically wouldn't be using. So it's really beautiful medicine to go through and to experience.
Isn't that awesome? And I love that
Yeah.
there's the research to back it up. So let's see if we
Mhm.
can make kind of a mental picture for people of what it is that our brain is doing when we have these repeating patterns. So we have these neurons that kind of go almost like we're on a car and we're kind of
Mhm.
traveling a path. And then when we get stuck in those repeating patterns, it's almost like the car is stuck in this loop, where you're just going around and around and around, and you can't seem to find an exit. It just keeps going around and around. And so when we try to talk our way out of it, it's like, okay, well, let's take an exit. Let's try something else. But our body is just like, we're doing the Indy 500. We're just going around and around and around, turning left. And then to get this experience with the psilocybin, it's almost like we're going to stop, we're going to reset, we're going to pick your car up and allow it to go back onto an open road again so that you can choose where you go rather than being stuck in a loop. And that, I don't know, is magical. So if
Yeah.
someone's struggling with depressive thoughts, like,
Mhm.
I'm not good enough and the world would be better off without me, and all of the people
Mhm.
around me, nobody cares, and, they'd be better off without me. And you can get stuck in this spiral, nasty loop that's so hard to get out of. And if you
Mhm.
can pick up that car and put it on a fresh track, then you can
Mhm.
say, oh, actually, I'm pretty awesome and my life is fine. I may have some
Mhm.
challenges, but I can do this.
Mhm.
And the potential is quite mind-blowing. Do you
Uh,
have some stories and examples that you could share with us?
yeah, absolutely. So one example that comes to my mind right away was someone that I was working with. He was a retired police officer who was struggling with PTSD. He's also at certain times had suicidal thoughts, kind of like what you were describing. And he was at the end, he was like, I don't know what I can do. Like everything I've tried has not worked. I've been in therapy, he's tried different pharmaceuticals. It didn't help him. And so he came to me with his colleague back in 2019, and we worked together over the course of 7 days. We did 3 ceremonies. And because he was a police officer, and this is something that can happen, sometimes we're taught to control so much. And for a police officer, somebody in the military, they would be taught to control their environment, right? Because it means life or death for them. So sometimes they're just always in this control state of their mind. And so he didn't necessarily even have a psychedelic experience where maybe you would see colors or visions or things like that. His experience was just very like, I feel like safe, I feel peaceful, I feel love, but he didn't have any of those visual experiences. And after the course of 7 days, he started off as someone who had a lot of negative thoughts towards himself, always blaming himself. He had a hard time relating to other people. He was very triggered by other people. He had bouts of anger. And then by the end of the 7 days, he was giving himself love, compassion, recognizing that not everything was his fault, all of these types of things. And also was able to look at connection with others and through a completely different lens that allowed him to be able to be open to connecting with other people. And then, so that was in 2019. I spoke with him actually maybe 8 months ago, and he's still doing really well. So that is just the kind of confirmation that this is changing how the brain works. So even though he didn't have a psychedelic experience where you would expect maybe you're getting like, well, as these documentaries are showing, you're getting insights to your own experience or your own trauma. Actually, that wasn't his experience at all. It was his brain was changing, and so he felt different when the experience finished. So that's a really powerful example of what psilocybin can do for us.
I love that.
Yeah.
And not only was it incredibly powerful, but it happened quickly and the
Hmm.
effects were long lasting.
Yeah.
It's almost like a cheat code on a video game where it's like you can fight your way through or you can just blink up to the next level, which is
Mhm.
so amazing. That was delicious. Can I have another one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just trying to think. I've had so many really powerful transformational experiences for people. Actually, one that recently happened, and actually we had a coaching call today, was this gentleman was somebody who he wasn't necessarily struggling with anxiety or depression or PTSD, but what he was struggling with was his confidence, his self-confidence, his self-esteem. And so what would happen for him is say he would communicate with somebody and then he would go through it in his head and he'd be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Why did I say that? And he just started to have all this self-doubt. And so he was constantly in his head, just overthinking everything that he would do, all of his behaviors, his actions, his like conversations. And it was really limiting him and he was having a hard time with that. So he came to a retreat this summer actually, and we did 2 ceremonies together. And he is when I met with him now, he's just a totally different person and he recognizes it in himself. So his results were that he no longer has these repeating thoughts in his mind. He's like, I can have a conversation with somebody and he's like, I feel really clear. He's like, I'm actually listening to what they're saying as opposed to I would in the past I'd be overthinking, oh, how am I gonna respond to that? Oh, I gotta tell them this story or like, so just really just these small, subtle shifts that he's noticed massive changes in his life and how he relates to people. Another thing is that he always needed others to really like him. he needed validation from others. So that was part of his looping thoughts, where he was worried that maybe he had offended somebody or he said the wrong thing. And so now he's like, you know what? I don't really care. Everything's okay. Like, it's okay if they don't like me, and he set some boundaries with his partner that he wouldn't have done before, with some friends that he was being triggered by. And he's just like, I'm noticing this massive shift in everything in my life and on all fronts, like relationships with friends, with family. So it's been really beautiful to be a part of and watch that for him.
Oh my gosh, that's magical. And that kind of story seems like it applies to billions of people on the
Mhm.
earth, where
Mhm.
that feelings of, am I good enough? And do I have the confidence? And can I stand? And can I speak to someone? And can I listen to what you're saying rather than trying to repeat and figure out what it is that I'm going to say next? Because I don't want you to think that I'm stupid when I give a response that isn't quite the right thing. And not requiring approval.
Yeah.
So if I put something on social media, I don't panic if I don't get a bunch of views or likes or responses or whatever, because I know that I am okay. Oh, that is,
Mhm.
wow, that's amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
so now I'm going to ask, if it's okay, some
Wow.
of the questions and things that have been on my mind since I've even opened my mind to the possibility of this. And
Okay.
one is that with the changes that it makes into your brain, because they are long lasting, they're permanent,
Hmm.
I don't want any changes that are not good. So
Mm.
I think doing this with someone who is a trained guide is a really good idea. Do you have any
Yes.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that it can create a beautiful container for you to feel, first of all, safe. And also somebody that can make sure that you're ready for this experience. Because no matter what state of mind you're in, whether it's good or bad, it can potentially amplify that state. So it's really important that you're working with somebody that understands, well, also contraindications. So things like people that have gone through states of psychosis, so schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, like those two conditions would be contraindicated and wouldn't be a good fit for psilocybin therapy. So the other thing is anyone on antidepressants would also need to like consider like coming down off of their antidepressant, because psilocybin works on the same receptors in the brain as the antidepressant. So two things can happen. One, it might not work for you, or the other thing, which is rare, but it can potentially happen, is it could flood the receptors, which could make it dangerous. So it's important to work with somebody that does understand all of these things and that you trust, and again can create that safe container for you to go through the experience.
Okay. And
Yeah.
you've gone through the training so you can be that safe container for someone. And that, I think that matters. My other thought or question, I guess, is the cost. Is it super cost restrictive? Do I need to come to your facility and stay for a week, or what would that look like?
Yeah. So the way that I work, pretend my personal way with my business is that I try to make it accessible for most people. So whatever that could look like for you. We work with really small. It's a small, intimate group. So it could be anywhere from a one-on-one personal retreat all the way up to 6 people at the most. But usually average is 2 to 4 people because we're running them monthly. So there's lots of opportunity there to be able to be in more of a private space. So if say, you're not ready right now to commit to the financial cost, so it can range anywhere from, one ceremony can be anywhere from around $1,500, and it could go, a retreat in total could be like a 4-day retreat, for example, would be maybe around $3,500. So, so it's not super inexpensive, but it's also not at the higher end either. There is some retreats out there that are quite expensive. But when you're booking and coming into this space, like we're taking care of everything for you. we're creating, first of all, a beautiful space in a private villa in the jungle in nature. There's always a pool. We have a private chef we work with. We have a private sound healer, massage therapy. We go to indigenous ceremonies. So it's an experience that is completely inclusive and that can honestly, in those 4 days can potentially transform how you're feeling and your life indefinitely. So in the end, it's one of those things. It's like it's almost priceless in that sense. I've had people that said, when I decided to do this experience, like it did feel expensive, but I knew I was investing in myself. And when I left, I felt like I didn't pay enough money. So yeah. So I mean, it's we try, and we're also starting to work on a scholarship program for people that can't afford it as well. So they can apply, and so we're just launching that very soon.
How exciting.
Yeah.
That sounds so wonderful. Like, gosh, I just want to sign up so that I can hang out in this little private retreat and have my private chef and do all this fun stuff. And I loved that you used the word invest
Yeah.
because I think that that's probably the way that we need to look at it is that
Hmm.
we are investing in ourselves.
Yeah.
And, is it worth it? Would I like to spend, X amount of dollars on my next 3 years worth of therapy? Or maybe try something different. So either way, we're trying to invest in our well-being because we want to be happy.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we put money into things that mean something to us. So if we do value ourselves and we value our health and our wellness and our mental health, then we will like find a way to make it work for us to invest in ourselves.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Do I value myself? Is
Yeah.
that something that matters to me? Do I matter to me enough
Hmm.
to be able to do something for myself?
Yep, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. And if you don't feel that way, the medicine always brings you there, because it is also an ego disassociation. So the ego that's overriding, telling us the stories about ourselves that aren't true, like I'm not good at this, I shouldn't have done that. Like that voice inside of us, which it ends up being our ego. It helps you to separate from that and see yourself in a totally different light and find that self-love and that self-compassion that we could all really do with.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. So even if you didn't necessarily feel that way at the beginning, you will by the end. I
Yes.
have another clarifying question, I guess, and that is you talked about signing up for 1 day or for 4 days. Do I kind of have an idea of what it will take in order for me to get the results that I want? Is there kind of a way to guess or
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say a 1 day experience would be for somebody that maybe has done a lot of psychedelics already or has been doing a lot of healing work in themselves with meditation, therapy. They're already at a certain level. I would say like a more immersive 4 or 5 day would be for somebody that had a lot of things to work through. Maybe they're just at the beginning of their healing journey. They need a lot more working through a lot of stuff that they haven't processed. So the 4 and the 5 day are similar. The difference is that the 5 day gives you more integration space, which for somebody who has a lot of deep wounds that they need to work through or a lot of things coming up, that's a really great option for them. So
oh, I'm excited to check out your website again. This is so cool. All right. Do you have anything else you want to make sure that we cover before we close today? Or do you have another story that's just like, oh, I got to tell this one?
yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'll share my story, actually, my experience, my first experience with psilocybin. So, as I mentioned, I was on a beach in Mexico. I had a lot of fear around it, which most people do. They feel a lot of anxiety, worrying about what is going to come up for me, like all my worst fears. And for me, it was this really beautiful healing experience that showed me, first of all, that I was loved and supported. So if you're not somebody that believes that there is the unseen or the divine that's supporting us, you might feel that connection in the experience. So that was my personal experience with it. So it was my very first time feeling that. And also, it showed me my life from this bird's eye view. And it was like, okay, well, these things happen to you because of this. And, you should have let this person go around here. And like, it just kind of walked me through my life and then said, but it's okay. You're here now. And like, this is where you're going now. And so start to trust that path. And so that's how I ended up here doing this work, was just trusting, and it showed me that path. So sometimes when we feel lost in our life, or we don't know where to go, or we think we've done all the things that we were supposed to do and checked all the boxes, but we still don't feel that fulfillment, there's something that psilocybin can do that can help you with that. So, yeah.
That was fascinating. Thank you for sharing. And
Yeah.
after hearing your story, it makes your explanation about the police officer make a little bit more sense. How you said he didn't get that insight. I didn't know that that was an option. So it sounds
Yeah.
like for you, not only was that feeling of I am loved, but
Mm-hmm.
also kind of an overview of your life of, okay, here's what happened. Here's
Mm-hmm.
some of the whys.
Mm-hmm.
You're fine. Everything is okay. And now we'll go from here.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yes, it is. And I think most people get kind of stuck at some point in their life. And this is like a really beautiful next step to help you to get unstuck.
And
So,
that's really the perfect word, because we talked about maybe kind of an analogy of a car just going around and around and around. It's like we're stuck.
mhm.
Our brain is looping. We're stuck. We can't get off of that track into another one. Beautiful. Oh, thank you, Tara. This has been delightful.
Yeah, thank you. This has been a beautiful conversation.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Frank Zappa. He said, "The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open." Today, I invite our listeners to open our minds to the various tools that can benefit our mental health and well-being. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for listening. Please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. And if you'd like to heal your life from the inside out, there is a free video series at hopeforhealingfoundation.org. Just click on the free stuff tab. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.